Here's one of my eucalyptus trees that I grew from seed. This is Eucalyptus Stellulata, also known as Black Sallee. Try and get a better angle. The fence and the pots are kind of blocking the view. And this is a small species of eucalyptus, about 40 feet overall, and it is found from New South Wales all the way down to Melbourne, which is in Victoria. And apparently this one can handle a lot of waterlogged soil and poor draining soil. I can tell you that it's probably in poor draining soil, and in the winter it's waterlogged, and in the summer it's quite dry. And because of that, this one has been an extremely slow grower for me. If you can believe it, I think it's been in the ground for 4 years. I put it in, it was smaller than that protection, that little wrapping around the base, and you know, my friend the rabbit came along and lopped it off. Didn't eat it, but you know, just cut it in half for me. So I put the protection on, and this is as far as we've gotten. I think it's just because it just does not get any water in summer. So overall height, you know, maybe 5 foot. It does have a little bit of spotting on the leaves. Some of this damage was from the summer, but you can see it. The thing about eucalyptus is they grow throughout the year. This one, I think it's, you know, pretty similar to a lot of the other ones. This actually is considered a snow gum. You can look up the reason why. Something to do with the bark, the way it runs. And this one's actually growing into like a nice dense habitat. A lot of times they want to grow up before they grow out. And like with many eucalyptus, it is growing on an angle. I don't know what is with these guys, but they just love growing on weird angles. So this was the original leader. That's where it got lopped off. And this was the side shoot. So in time, it's just starting to, you can see, it's getting to the point now where it is starting to shed a little bit of bark. And it is supposed to have quite nice bark. You can see the old is more of a grayish color, and then it's actually quite yellow. Look up here. See it right there. So a few tips on eucalyptus. Make sure you select a small species unless you have a very big property. I know people always say, oh, they drop their branches and they're dangerous, but I think many of these small ones, you don't have to worry about that. Like I said, this one has been extremely slow growing for me. I think perhaps because of the location, but they will speed up with time. And with eucalyptus, I would, if you ever saw one about this size in the store, I would not recommend buying it because they grow so quickly. Their roots just tend to swirl around in the pots. And so you're better off with very small specimens, you know, 8-10 inches, ones that are only a few months old, or you can grow from seed. When you acquire the seed, this one here requires a period of cold stratification. And so what I did was I had some damp soil in a plastic container. I sprinkled the seeds, they're very fine, on top, and then a thin layer of sand, and then sealed that, put it in the fridge for 2 months. Alternatively, you could just put it in a pot and leave it outside if you live somewhere where you're going to get some colder temps. And so after those couple months, I brought it out, took the lid off and put it outside, and they popped pretty quickly thereafter. When they are small, I do find that they're quite fragile, very, very tender little plants. So if you get a number of them to germinate, there's a good chance you're going to lose some of them, and that's okay. You don't really need a ton of these. You usually only want 1 or 2. I had 2. The other one I planted actually died. So for me, this is a much less vigorous eucalyptus. I am sure that with time, when this gets a little bit bigger, that it will start to take off and grow faster. But for the time being, it's stayed a relatively small tree. So This is a good one. The seed for this particular tree came from trees in Olympia, Washington, which is zone 8A, I believe, and they are a much cooler, damper, more humid climate. This one, the leaves are a little bit more green. I think this is a combination of the drought from the summer and then that cold weather we had. But to my eye, they are a little more green. They're not quite as blue as some species. So we'll see how this one develops with time. I would think that either this year or next year it should start taking off. I find that when you plant these as little seedlings, they start out slow and then they'll get to a certain size and they'll just take off. So there you go, Black Sallee.